All right, everyone. I want to thank everyone for showing up for the ET board meeting for August for Farsight. And this is a very special one. Our guests today are two extraterrestrial friends that have come by to give us a briefing, talking about what's happening and letting us ask questions. These two particular people that have come before are at least one woman, maybe one woman, and I can't tell the other. But they have snappy, sort of whitish and bluish type of uniforms on, and they're social scientists. So this is a very interesting time period for us, because I had some questions, and I'm gonna, if it's okay, I'm gonna be starting off with my questions, and then I'll open it up, or we will open it up to everybody else. But right now in the world, we have a situation where the world is ricocheting, is the only thing I can think of it, in every possible direction. Like you have a bullet that's fired inside a steel box, and it's just ricocheting off of all the walls. Ding, 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 ding. So you have Ukraine and Russia, and then Europe adapting and changing in totally unexpected ways every moment. And then you have the situation between Israel and Iran looking like it's going to pop again and go in all types of different directions. We have military ships, U.S. military ships off the coast of Venezuela, and it looks like we may be engaging cartel forces and maybe even the Mexican army in Mexico. U.S. troops, National Guard troops, are starting to march into the major cities in the United States. They've already taken over Washington, D.C., and there's apparently things going into cities across the country to sort of control things, and there is lots of things happening in those cities, rioting and protests and things. So it really looks like we might be moving slowly but surely in the direction of some type of martial law in the United States. And the world events may actually end up entering into the United States as well. So really things are happening in very unpredictable ways, but it's not happening like tomorrow or today or the next day. It's not one day. It's over a period of months and years, year and a half, whatever. I'm not sure what the time frame is. But that's what I wanted to ask you about. As social scientists, you know that we've had an interest in Isaac Asimov's Foundation trilogy, and as have you. And the issue with Harry Seldon's psychohistory is that he was a social scientist, and that was the leading science in the galaxy. It wasn't science of technology, because societies have basically invented everything that can be invented. The real cutting edge of science is the science of society, of people. So I wanted to ask you, what do you see going on here on Earth? Can you tell us anything about the nonlinear evolutionary changes that are happening on Earth? And when is this going to spill into disclosure? Because the more we get into chaos in the world, on the planet, the more people are turning away from the concept of disclosure, even though disclosure of the ET presence is fundamental and at the root of all the other problems, and that the other problems cannot be resolved unless the disclosure thing happens. So can you talk to us about when that happens? Because it seems like as the crises are happening more and more and more, people are turning away from disclosure, yet the disclosure is the key. And but again, the disclosure can't happen unless the crises get to a certain point. So anyway, so could you talk to us about your science of as you see the science of humanity, the science of the society here? Okay, I'm going to shut up now. They're talking. All right, so I want to thank everyone for allowing us to come and talk. And Courtney is correct. We are two social scientists. And we work in sort of what you might consider like a university setting in the sense of social research, although we work on the ships, sometimes on planets. And so we study societies, and we look at how societies change and evolve. And this is a particularly interesting case study for us, because we're actually here on Earth, and we're actually studying the evolution of the changes on Earth. And this is live time. So for us, this is data collection time. We're collecting data on actually how this works, and we have our own theories of how this works. And all of the stuff that you've been seeing, you've been interacting with Bill the Grey, military people, ETAIs. You've been interacting with other humans, other command structure people that are part of the armada. But behind everything is social science, because if the social science doesn't come through, then all of the other efforts don't work. It doesn't matter what the armada does militarily. It doesn't matter what the command structure does in terms of ordering things to go one way or the other. It doesn't matter what the ETAIs can do or how fast they can do it. If the goal is to change the society, to have the society erupt, to have like a volcano within the society, but to have it controlled, a controlled volcanic explosion on the planet, so that this erupts in a way that yields a positive event that ultimately will involve disclosure, full disclosure, so that you know everything that's going on. And yes, we were involved in all of the different parts of this, and everybody on the entire goody tea side that Courtney likes to call us is ultimately depending on us being correct on the social science side. So for those people who want to understand what this is all about social science. And okay. So I should pause? Okay, they want me to pause right away, and they want me to shut up, and that's all they want from me in terms of an introduction for now. So who would you like? Then they want me just to shut up and actually say, you guys can talk, and I'm not not supposed to say I'm supposed to let it go. You guys decide who's going to talk.
With your opening, I mean, I have a few questions of my own and also a few pings that I was getting. First of all, a lot of these events, they trigger certain emotion. They trigger a collective reality that is formed, ongoing, So when we have like such negative news and, U.S. Navy ships are on the coast of Venezuela, when we have this kind of cyclical, very, very cyclical news of destruction, poverty, death and all that, it seems like a huge master plan by the bad ETs to kind of get all of our emotions, get all of our power of creation to head towards that way. So, I mean, my question would be like, is that what exactly would be part of your plan if a lot of these things are being triggered? Because clearly there's been a lot of research, there's this kind of like law of assumption that whatever you expect goes on to create your reality. So how would that create a positive reality? Because it feels like this is all kind of being done by the bad ETs. I just don't see how positive beings would trigger negative events like this. If anything, wouldn't you want to trigger some sort of like rebellion, a positive rebellion? Kind of like the Vietnam War, right? That triggered something that was like, all right, we're not going to go to war. And then it took many decades of not outward war, right? It was kind of more covert type of things because the masses weren't going to get behind it. And then it took 9/11 for the people to like ramp up behind, all right, let's go on and do like a foreign invasion type of thing. So in my mind, I understand that there is something being triggered. I personally do not understand what it is that is being triggered, and I won't accept that wars and this kind of like negative stuff is ever going to come to bring positive outlooks or bring positive results.
Okay, who do you want to translate the response? Okay, so they detect there's sort of a block on your side because you have an idea of saying this can't produce something good. So they're wondering, they don't know if you're able to pick up their answer.
If I could chime in, what I felt as you were speaking was that this is it's like you have multiple construction teams on the same construction site, and competing narratives in terms of, or competing building plans going on. I think that there's a significant part of this destruction, war-bringing creation that seemingly comes from a very negative side of our planned future. But I think that there's still ambiguity of how the structure is going to ultimately end up looking, and there's a lot of factors at play that go down to be quite honest, some rather small players, but also some very, very big macro level planning that's going on. I have this sort of competing sensation, and I don't really know how to make heads or tails of it, but I have this sort of competing sensation that there is simultaneously this set upon trajectory, but a war within the set upon trajectory of how that set upon building is going to look. And I think that that is not necessarily resulting in just the existence of war, but I think it's sort of manifested as breaking a few eggs to make an omelet type of energy. I also think that there's a big misunderstanding in terms of this dichotomy of good and evil, and how good and evil are subjectively defined from higher dimensional life forms or more advanced civilizations. I think also if we apply our current level of good and evil to define their actions, multiple highly advanced beings' actions, we'll see a lot of dissonance, a lot of cognitive dissonance with what we're seeing. And I think that a lot of our previous remote viewing sessions actually shed light on this type of stuff with various power structures and various ideals that have defined our collective sense of good, coming from basically deceptive tactics, or what we would now call deceptive tactics, or propaganda machines of the ancient world, sort of trickling down into what we see today. But I get a real strong sense that I just do not think that the idea that the good guys are in control of everything is a very true fact. I think that there is a significant amount of conflicts going on, and a brighter future. I definitely think the future right now is going to be brighter at the end of things, but I don't think it's going to look pretty getting there. And I think a big part of that is realizing that the human experience is not divorced entirely from the animal experience that we see with the brutality of nature and the brutality of the jungle. I say this quite often, the only one real rule that I think really applies ubiquitously across the human experience is the rule of the jungle, is the rule of the mighty. And I think that is where good and evil sort of are subjective colors that are painted across that lens.
Now you're speaking as if it's from you. So you have to tell everybody what is from you, because it sounded a lot like it was from you, and what is the answer that's coming from them.
The beginning part of that was coming directly from them. I was just trying to put it into my own words because it's a conflicting, it's a paradox. I'm getting the sense that there is a conflict going on in terms of the fate of the planet, but I also get the sense that there is this sort of overarching set master plan of what's sort of been predestined to happen here, and it's being orchestrated by advanced extraterrestrial beings. That's an energy that I feel there, but I don't feel like that's something that's devoid of conflict amongst the contractors, the many contractors who have been employed to elicit this architectural design.
I guess I just feel like I'm living inside of an experiment or something. Like they're experimenting on the planet, and I'm just kind of watching the experiment go down, if that makes sense. So I guess as far as like good ETs and bad ETs, I just feel like they're all different factors within the experiment as a whole, if that makes sense.
Are you picking up anything with respect to Enzisam's question of how these sort of bad, horrible, and going to get worse you're like into them. Your question was sort of saying, how can all of these troubles lead to something good? But it's really, this is just the beginning of the troubles. They're going to get even worse.
My particular question was in regards to the statement that was made that they are allowing, or they're orchestrating for this, that like this is meant to happen. These events are meant to happen. And I'm not disagreeing with these events are meant to happen. My question is, which part, how exactly are things being orchestrated on their end? Because the tactics of war this, war that, blah, 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 you know, spiral into fear, that it just smells of like bad ETs, right? It's, scare everybody into like creating a collective reality of war and destruction and let them buy into all this fear mongering and stuff like that. I'm saying that my question was how exactly, what are the actions that they are taking? And I mean, I did kind of get mental pings back after I asked that, and it was just kind of positioning themselves. The bad ETs, it feels like there is a time they're reaching like a cornering, right? And it's like a wild animal is going to chew off its own leg just to get free, and they're positioning themselves so that when that does happen, that they're ready to act. And that feels like we are kind of like at the edge of that happening, of them snapping, almost like, well, they've thrown everything at this situation, right? They've thrown all the like, you know, fear and like wars and stuff like that, and then there's a lot, you know, so that we're getting towards the edge, and their job is just to position themselves so that when things hit the wall, that they're ready to act.
I think there's a lot of
to allow the things to happen. It's not that it is not that the good ETs, I don't like when you speak through my body. It's not that the good ETs are creating them. These things are going to happen anyway. These things are being put into place because there are other factors at play. So no, we are not. So no, they are not the catalyst of what is happening to create these things, but they do have to allow movement in the space of these things. And I know that we have mentioned before, and that you all have mentioned before in other spaces when we're speaking with other extraterrestrials, that they're saying that we have to break things down. We have to create a new order. We have to create a new world. We must be able to allow things so that we can, you have to till. You have to till the land and dig it up and dig up all of the things. And you'll find things that are bad within the land when you do that before you plant a new seed. You must, as you are spring cleaning, you have to get rid of the things that are not of any use anymore, or that have harmed you before, or that are broken. So in this case, because we do live in such a world that is, what is the word? Because we do live in a world that has, that uses pain to create for whatever reason, because we live in this type of world, we do have to destroy and dismantle using some of these things. This is not a world where people will hold hands and sing Kumbaya and everything will be just peachy. This is not the type of land that Earth is. It's not what it was created for. It's not what it is anymore. If we take away all of religion, we take away all of the different things, and we look at what is, and even if we bring it into this, to the place, even God said, hey, I'm tired of this shit. Let's blow it up, or let's flood it. Next time I'm going to do it in fire. Right? It's shitty. So when we are in a space of things that are discombobulated, and we're in a place of things that create violence, sometimes you must use those same tactics. If somebody points a gun at me, I'm not a violent person. I'm going to have to shoot back. Do I know how? Yes. Is that a thing I want to do? No. Right? And I'm just translating this from what I'm hearing, and using life to explain it. But no, the good ETs, their purpose is to maybe just, is to, how do I say, is to help to shape it and to place it, because it's going to happen anyway. I know my child's about to have a temper tantrum. Let me produce the when and the where it's going to happen. Let me hurry up and get out of here. Let me give him something right quick to hold it off real quick, or let me induce it quicker because I need to get going type of situation. I know that I'm about to spaz because I'm overstimulated. For people who get overstimulated, something bad's about to happen. Let me go ahead and move the situation over this way so that I can either prevent it. If I realize I can't prevent it, how do I nullify it, or how do I create a different type of plan for the meltdown to happen in the best possible way, in the way it can, with the least destruction, because I still have to destroy in order to build. I still have to dig up the muck in order to plant. I still have to knock down this building that is falling, that is crumbling, the government that is falling, that is crumbling across the land, not just America, but in the entire world. We still have to shake it in order to replace it, in order to put things back on top of it, in order to create a firm foundation, create solid ground. And I do believe that this may not be something that we see in our lifetime. This is something that is very elongated. While these things are being moved quickly in this lifetime, so that the people like us can communicate to the newer being, to this Gen Alpha that's out here, they're going to be the ones that are taking our knowledge and taking the demolition, and they're going to be the ones to rebuild. But we have to get it out the way so that we're not too far removed in a place where we have children or the people that are going to grow up to be the adults to handle this. They don't have our guidance.
So I think a big part of what you were saying, Yame, the idea of bringing up the muck for this construction effort, because I think that's something that I get that a lot of the destruction, from what I'm feeling from these guys, is part of a greater construction effort to build this new human experience. But I think a lot of that, the more negative side of things, is actually a revealing as well. I mean, you have to acknowledge the muck for you to remove the muck.
Exactly.
And, yeah, so it's when we have all these negative atrocities and sort of things that are especially coming out right now, it seems like they're being discussed and discovered right now, quite a lot of things. However, they're old things. They've been around, just hidden from sight for decades and stuff like that. When we have these networks of just vile things that have been, I won't go into the specifics of them, but networks of incredibly vile things, and people being arrested, people being brought to light, just military stuff that's been going on, even in these war-torn areas, like where Ukraine has been a military hot point right now for quite a while. They seem to be moving into a diplomatic arena right now in terms of the direction of the war. We'll see if that continues. But the things that have been coming out about the general military activity and intelligence activity has been really shining a light onto people judging each other by their actions and not so much by their words. And judging each other by their words seems to have been the lingua franca, the standard of how countries would understand each other for decades. And now people are, the citizens mostly, are getting a different view of what the nature of their own countries and countries around the planet are through actions and through understanding these clandestine actions that not just military oriented, not just intelligence oriented, but sometimes even corporate oriented, or just dealing with cults. I mean, very mystical-y type of cultish people who are very powerful people in very high places, and they do cultish type of behavior. So that also, that revealing, that great revealing, seems to be by design for, and this is sort of, I think this is in general a very good thing, to figure out that there is all this negative stuff that's been going down under people's noses. However, the reason I think this is where I'm getting that sort of vibe from these guys about the conflict still being there within this grand architect plan. This can also be a very useful tool for both utopian and dystopian plans in the future, because when you're breaking things down and you're going to be destroying this system by revealing a great number of things, you can use that as an excuse by putting people in that fear state to lock them into a far more Orwellian authoritarian system. Also, you can end up using that to galvanize hearts and minds to band together and have a more grassroots approach to a more positive future. And I think a mixture of both of those things is probably on the horizon. I get this feeling from them that it's not going to be there's going to be a very big unifying process across the planet when these systems dissolve. But how that looks, and as the human experience goes multiplanetary within, which I think is going to happen within all of our lifetimes, I think that we're going to see kind of like what happened in the Dune novels. We're going to see a lot of aspects of society start to polarize and sort of become entrenched in a very wide array of philosophies, and I think some of those are going to be quite dystopian in nature, and I think some of those things are going to be quite utopian, and perhaps more organic might be the right word to say as well. And I think this also plays into what you were saying, Kamaya, with the idea that this is this all feels like an experiment. Even in the good ET concept, if we're going to stick with those words, good ET, bad ET, it all feels like relatively an experiment to tailor a direction for the not a country in specifically, but for the general human population as a whole. And there are plenty of spoons in that soup. So I'll end it on there. Shantae, did you have something that you wanted to say as well?
Oh, sure. So I would say what I'm getting from these beings that are visiting us is regarding the wars we have today, the potential for martial law today, that is a result from beings, evil beings, whether that be evil ETs or actual evil humans, because that's a possibility as well. They're betting on the fact that we'll be stagnant. And that stagnation is not always just a lack of action. I think it's also regarding fear and anxiety, more so maybe overaction, but in the wrong direction. Like, let's say we're focused on plan B, plan C, plan D, when that energy could be going to plan A, which could still be successful. And regarding these beings that are visiting us today, being social scientists, that's what they see for humans, this big anxiety that's growing. And what the message I'm picking up from them is that this is a good time to challenge yourself, challenge your challenge yourself in a way that you're stepping outside of your comfort zone, but that can maybe look like putting energy towards an achievement that will benefit more than just you as an individual. I think that's a big error, a big flaw that these beings are seeing with our society today, that's leading to this fear and anxiety, because we're not meant to be thinking so much focus on, well, how am I going to survive tomorrow when it's still today? Like, there's just a big error in the way that they see our society's thought process. So,
Yeah. Shantae, why don't you tell everyone what country you're in? It's Wednesday, so what country are you in today?
Today, I'm in the UK, the United Kingdom.
I have a question for our guest. I'm not going to answer it. I'd like to see what everyone else can sort of pick up as I ask the question. But I have maybe this is me just being a little too empathetic, or maybe this is me just lacking faith in the strength of maybe some grassroots power. But I feel like there is a necessity for any organized species to galvanize their power to defend themselves through a centralized force of some sort. And of course, if we have that too far on one end of the extreme, you have like super mega corporate fascism and all the nightmarish cyberpunk novels that we would sort of get that decrease the quality of or high tech low life is the trope of cyberpunk is high advanced technology, and then the general population is basically treated as a slave race, and the quality of life for the general person is quite low. But how can we have a society that has sort of all these more, for lack of a better word, hippie-ish grassroots energies and keep them, and still have the teeth to show a real predator, basically another organized group, that we're not buckling, that's something that we can actually defend the values that we have without having what we basically have currently been living in, which is basically the lie, the perceived sense of a lot of these more or less freedoms, while there is this underground cabal that is doing unspeakable things going on at the same time. So it seems like there's two governments, sort of a shadow government that is a bit more of that super authoritarian and corporate fascist type of thing right now, and then there's this more rose garden where people sort of just have this illusion of their freedoms, but it seems a bit more walled. So going into a future where we're sort of revealing the secrets, so to speak, at least more so to a degree, and the acceptability of a lifetime leading towards an enlightened state is more accessible than it ever has been before. So let's take the more rosy-colored picture of the future. How do we, as a society, have centralized power and the opposite end of that spectrum, which without going into a state of weak anarchy?
Can you ask that again?
So how do you have both sides of the spectrum, where you have a strong centralized power in a society that can really defend itself, yet at the same time have a civilian population that feels emancipated, like truly emancipated, and feels like they're bound by all the positive feelings that you feel in Lord of the Rings, like the fellowship and pride and united men and women of the West and stuff like that. How does that happen?
So, Yeme, I think if I were to translate Aziz's question, let me give a shot at this.
Go for it.
Because he comes out of it from an academic perspective of international relations that contains an awful lot of content in even one sentence. So I think what he's basically saying is, in order for us to accomplish anything, we have to have order. We have to have a plan. We have to have a vision. We have to have somebody in control. But on the other hand, that plan has to incorporate freedom. And freedom, free will, is basically chaos, because everyone has their own thoughts about everything, and the society's coming apart. So how do you get a plan with order and centralized control out of chaos? How do you blend those two things together? Because that's what's happening in the world today. If you are enjoying the content of this video, please consider subscribing to our streaming service, FarsightPrime.com, where you will find all Farsight mystery projects, where we use remote viewing to investigate nearly every major mystery imaginable, including the reality of the very complicated extraterrestrial presence here on Earth, the solar system, and the galaxy, in addition to archaeological, religious, to deeply political mysteries of every type, and much, much more. Also consider studying Farsight's content by downloading the transcripts of Farsight Mysteries that you can find in The Vault on our regular website, farsight.org, and then uploading those transcripts to your favorite AI so that you can talk with your AI about our work at Farsight, asking your AI the deepest questions, all from the comfort of your own home or office. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Farsight, and remember to click on the notifications bell so that you can be notified of our new releases on YouTube, which includes our live stream events. And finally, please sign up for our free email newsletter that you can find on our website, farsight.org. We never send out spam, and we use our newsletter to announce all of our major offerings, including our live stream events, our deep news investigations, our ET communications, our ongoing investigations into more of the mysteries that are routinely ignored by the mainstream, and our upcoming new projects. After you watch what we bring to the table on farsightprime.com, you will never again look at the mainstream media, political leaders, or orthodox science or religion the same. You will find the checklist of things to do to keep you connected to our work at Farsight in the description below.
A balance without the lie.
Well, what I see is how we would get to that balance is just a redefining of what would be your rights as participating in this civilization. Because we have, I guess, defined rights, and we have knowledge of those rights, but who actually has access to those rights? So, like, for example, this is me speaking as myself, what I think is a right of existing on Earth is I should have access to food. And we're all participating in this society right now where that's not actually the case. So, and I think now it's becoming more disorganized due to the way that, for example, people want to get access to foods and the things that they need to live. So, speaking as the ETs, we would have to decide what we actually need going forward and how will people actually have access to those needs rather than giving them the idea that they'll have access to the needs. Does that make sense? I don't know, like...
If I was to interpret what you just said, I would sort of, and you correct me because I want to make sure I understand it, is when the society is collapsing, people have questions and needs. And how can you satisfy informational questions and needs in the midst of total chaos?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, like, religious institutions, the cults, as Aziz mentioned, I think any organized part of society, people participate because they have expectations. And I would say none of these institutions right now are living up to the expectations that we need to not have chaos.
So when the society comes apart, none of those expectations work because none of the institutions are working. So nobody will get what they're expecting from anybody. And maybe that's actually the point. If I could ask them a question is about that. Okay. Yema, you were going to say something?
No, I'm not.
Let me ask our guests a question about that. So what is the process that's going to take place when Armageddon really is in full steam? When all of the institutions collapse and everything is... How does the role of human expectation fit into this? Yeah, they say it's okay for me to answer this one. I'm to translate this one. So that is actually a very delicate question, because it could easily turn in the opposite direction. It could easily turn that people would then start blaming us, the goody teas, or anybody, almost in a random direction for the disasters that are happening. So when you have these expectations and the society falls apart and the institutions are no longer working, people will start demanding solutions that they are normally habitually used to getting from the institutions. So normally when people have questions, when people have needs, when people have desires, they look to some person, group, government, society for those things. It's habitually baked in to the human experience that people look outward to basically the infrastructure of society for the answers to their questions. And when the questions are coming at a time when the society's institutions don't work, that is both an opportunity for us and a great challenge. And it's the very moment that Shantae is talking about that we are banking on, that people will actually have these intense needs, desires, questions, and that they will not be able to get anything from the institutions. The institutions will not work, so the expectations will be totally unsatisfied. That, according to the science, the social science, that will break the hypnotic trance that the people have towards the institutions and the leaders. And that is the goal. It's like waking somebody up by slapping them on the face. They don't like to use violent examples, that sort of, anyway. But it's like waking somebody up by splashing water on their face. They're happier with that one. The idea is that the expectations are not going to be there. I mean, are not going to be resolved by looking at the normal places. The institutions won't work. So the people will then be forced to look around, and they're going to be looking around locally, not nationally. They're going to be looking around at their neighbors, at their friends, at their family, at their lovers. They're going to be looking at the people that surround them. And that's where they're going to be looking for solutions. And that's when we can come in. When you have the hypnotic trance broken. Because right now everybody looks at your phones, at the YouTube podcast that you're looking at. They look at the news, they look at whatever, they look for what president is going to be saying, they look at whatever the national leaders are going to be saying. That has to be broken, that hypnotic trance. And so this is a really crucial question that Shantae is really keying in on, which is what happens when those expectations cannot be satisfied. And that's the point. We have to get the society to the point where those expectations are extreme and that they cannot be satisfied. And then people will look away, and that will break the trance. It's like waking somebody up by throwing cold water on their face in the morning. And that's the moment that we need, because that's when we can talk to them. And we have no limitation of our resources to get to everybody on the planet. We have the ability to talk to everybody. But they have to be broken from the trance for us to be able to have a conversation with them, for us to be able to help them. And this addresses what Entisan was saying at the very beginning. You can't do anything new unless you break what was there. And it's always going to be violent, because the hypnotic trance to what the expectations are is so extreme. Something has to break, and no one wakes up from this hypnotic trance by themselves, just gently saying, oh, okay, I think I'm going to have a different idea. I'm going to start listening to the ETs now. That's just not going to happen. That trance breakage point is only accomplished at moments of extreme societal crisis. And that means trauma, pain, war, famine, all that type of stuff, and none of the institutions can handle any of it. Then the people will turn away, and here we are smiling. And they really want to emphasize that you have institutions like that, the United Nations and things like that, that sort of help to deliver food supplies and things like that. we, the ETs, have way more than that. We have the capability of solving all those problems all at once. There is no limitation that is that's even conceivable on human terms in terms of what we have in store. We have the capability of completely addressing all those needs, but the people have to be broken from their hypnotic trance, from their current institutions and leaders and things like that, in order to listen to us. And then we can come in and sort of turn the whole planet in a different direction.
So the thing that the both of them are moving through and saying between Aziz and Shantae is finding peace within society, within the chaos. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? Being able to like, how does one create these things? And what I'm hearing Dr. Brown say is that these things that are being put in place will wake people up. What I am feeling and catching on to is this very Black Mirror society, a very Black Mirror type of world here, where we are reflecting the negative and that and doing these things. Who is to say that what these good ETs or whatever, who is to say that what these good ETs are putting into place will wake people up? And in this, and I was talking and hearing back and forth, so bear with me as I go back and forth in my head out loud, because it was confusing myself. That's why I had to speak. But who's to say that these things will wake people up, or that what we at Farsight are even doing are waking people up, right? We have our small community of people that know what remote viewing is, and know what all the things that we do is, in the channeling, and the fact that ETs actually do exist. It's not just a phenomenon that you see on TV, blah, 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 right? All the things. But in truth, we have this, we are 30 seconds in to something, I'm bored. We have this, it's taking too long. We have this, let me record somebody mutilating a baby. We have this world of, let me just stand and watch somebody get raped. Yes, I'm getting vulgar here because these are the images that are being put inside my head right now. But we have this type of world where that's okay. Right? So when we are moving in these spaces, and this is what all three of you guys were kind of saying in a sense, when we are moving in these spaces of disarray, the biggest question that we all are asking is, how does the world find, what did you say, utopia, and peace, and the things that we need, and happiness in a space that's so full of chaos? And you guys are communicating with us about this. You guys are talking in a circle about this, but you have yet to answer our questions.
Let me add
one moment, Courtney. Within the questions that are being asked, there's a duality amongst the galaxy, right? You can even say that they're even in threes. You know, they're the triad amongst the galaxies, more than duality, because it is more. There's no such thing as good. There's no such thing as bad. There are the things that are also in between, and not everything is black and white. I know that you all are aware that not everything is black and white within these spaces. There is chaos amongst the space. If you think about someone whose house is a mess, but they know where everything is, but when you walk in, you think it's crap. There is a such thing as organized chaos. I think that you're still beating around the bush when you say that.
Can I talk now?
Go ahead.
First, they do want me to bring this up. Yema, you're raising a good question, but you're focusing on the chaos of the moment.
This isn't a moment. I'm focusing on the chaos that's been here for however many hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah.
This is not a momentary all of us are asking these same questions to all of you, to whoever can interpret this, whatever they're trying to say. But I call bullshit.
I think saying that there's been chaos for hundreds of thousands, there's been chaos in select places for hundreds of thousands of years, right? But there's been other places that have been these utopias, right? It's like, well, if you go to the if you go into the uncontacted tribes of the Amazon, I don't think they're experiencing that per se. I mean, their jungles are being chopped down and stuff like that. I think when Aziz asked that question, the image that came to my mind was, first of all, we do have these answers. The Buddha did give us, for example, just one being who gave us the solution for this is you can't be so associated with your body. There's this disillusionment of I am my body and I am my mind and that my reality is all that I see, but there's so much more than that. So I think that kind of utopia, it does stem from like really understanding our spiritual nature, really understanding our place in the universe, and the fact that, well, all these psychic powers are possible. There are like gurus and enlightened beings who can materialize and dematerialize, like if there's such a thing as like living your body willingly, Mahasamadhi. I don't need a passport. If I feel like I'm not in a good place, I can leave. These are things that are completely possible. So I think that it does come to that, that once we do really understand the nature of the universe, the nature of like who am I, then even like Tesla also comes to mind, right? What he was constructing before he got stopped was a structure giving every nation in the world the ability to defend themselves. And this comes from really understanding the universe, really understanding like physics and the nature of the universe and all this. So that's what I'd be getting from that question.
How do we get everyone else to see that?
Start meditating, because that starts with that, quiet your mind. I think that's just the answer, the most straightforward answer without confusing people, is separate yourself from your person, from what you think you are.
Okay, so what I'm getting from that with that answer is the yoke that, because the idea of order is like you have to organize people, and so if you're organizing people, that requires sort of I guess the conventional way of saying sort of you sacrifice a little bit of your freedoms to abide by a collective direction. And so if the yoke to create order in your community, it changes as your mind evolves. So if you identify yourself with an illusory experience, then the illusory experience's mechanisms become the mechanism to create order. And I guess if we're gonna put ourselves in like the idea of the hive minds that we always see every day, ant colonies. Like an ant colony, the mechanism to create order there is pheromones that sort of compel action based on what the ant queen is doing. And if we're applying that to a transhumanist sense, then I mean, I guess you could have a very nightmarish cyberpunk civilization that would have a lot of power and a lot of organization, because organization in a collective society, that does equate to a great amount of power, and we still live in the nature in the jungle world that we live in. So if we want to be a successful society, we need to have power. So if people aren't going to work together, if a community needs to get people to work together to be a strong community, you're saying if we grassroots evolve the nature of our mind, that would happen naturally as a byproduct of a more evolved consciousness, and we would sort of use the natural phenomena that would happen from unified mind as people develop their intuitive, empathetic, psychic abilities and all that type of stuff. And that's where I guess all that Lord of the Rings stuff does actually happen. The fellowship really does emerge there. Otherwise, if we don't do that, then I guess from your example, that really does push us into the idea that, okay, well, the community is going to be weak if we don't do something, and if people don't grassroots develop their psychic abilities, then we would need to become a cyberpunk transhumanist civilization to not succumb to predation, just to have the requisite power to fight for our own territory in the jungle of the galaxy. So that makes sense. So I'm just rephrasing what you said in my own words to make sure I understand
and
it.
Your smart words. Yes. I didn't make it sound like that, but yes, I
No, but I needed to hear it that way. That's great.
There's another way to look at it, and it's a type of theory that's often called in the social sciences here on Earth catastrophe theory, which is more of a binary approach. You have to think of what the ETs that these people have been dealing with would do to this planet if they had no threats from the good ETs. And the best way to do it is to remember what Earth used to be like during the pyramid building days, where everybody was running around in a loincloth, all technology was stripped from them, everybody was enslaved, everybody was impoverished. That ended because of an intervention from a different ET group that stopped that because they just thought it was too horrible. But that's what the so-called bad ETs would do if they just had their total ability to do anything. If we leave, this is them talking, if we leave, they're going to be able to do anything, and they're going to change their plan based on what is available to them. And what is available now as compared to the old pyramid building days in Egypt is billions more Isbis, immortal spiritual beings, souls, spirits, whatever you want to call them, billions more people, Isbis on this planet, 8 billion in physical bodies and billions outside in the wings waiting to rotate in. And they're going to have access to all of those Isbis. And this is not the same as back in the old pyramid building days when there were few Isbis on this planet relative to today. That would then enable them to use this as a huge resource. And from their perspective, it's like discovering the biggest gold mine in the universe, because they can then use all those Isbis to expand into the entire galaxy. And what would result in a holocaust which would affect us, because they would invade our territories, our space. They would take you guys in your Isbis, pack them into bodies, and you would become sex slaves. You would become soldiers, mercenaries. You would become fighting forces. And as you got killed off, because we would have to shoot you to defend ourselves, they would take your Isbis and repack them into new bodies and keep on shipping them out. And they'd have this almost unlimited source of Isbis, billions upon billions, to do that. And it would be a galactic holocaust of undescribable proportions in so many worlds, and we would have to marshal every resource that we have and possible friends that we have in other galaxies to help us out to beat that back. And if you think what you're going through now in these crises of Earth right now during the transition is bad, you have no idea what you will experience if we don't stop it here and now. So this crisis of the stuff that you're going through is what Courtney would call milk toast. It's nothing compared to what you will face if we don't succeed with this. That's the nature of the social sciences. We're dealing with these binary outcomes, pyramid building days, total slavery, and then Armageddon on a galactic scale that you can hardly imagine. I want to interrupt this right now. I want Kamaya to speak.
I still put my big foot on it's a giant experiment, and I don't understand how social scientist workers or whatever want to come over here and say that if they leave, then we're fucked. I don't get it. Courtney.
See, I told you you would come up with the centering moment. You would come up with the nugget that refocuses the question that our entire audience out there in the world on the internet is asking. That's what they're asking. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We say that type of stuff to dogs all the time. Like, you know, we don't say it all the time. I mean, I don't think anyone says that to their dog every day, but I think everyone would agree that if you're a loving owner of a dog, the dog has a better life with you than if they were just running around in the jungle. So if the experiment analogy, if the message that, you know, you're hearing is that it's better to be a part of our experiment than it is to, you know, be out there in the jungle, you know, that's a common thing that pet owners would say.
It also sounds like control.
It also sounds like very Orwellian control. Yeah, pretty evil.
Any tea sound?
I would say that when you say something so stark and disturbing, like what you just said, Courtney, you should follow it up with like what people should do, like something, you know, like actionable. Yeah, just to rebalance, because it's scary what you just said. So
It is scary. The quicker you break yourself off from the hypnotic trance to the authorities,
well, then how?
the
Right?
quicker you will refocus on the central questions in your near surrounding, which is, how are you going to take care of yourself?
Yeah, and it starts with one person at a time, and
Yeah,
it's
how are
important
you-
to tell them
Do you
how.
have a food supply?
Oh.
Do you have a huge bags of beans and rice, for example?
I think the psychic ability development is a big part of that as well, though. If you
Exactly.
develop your psychic abilities, you're like the Rock of Gibraltar. Nobody can really move you.
Exactly.
You're
yeah.
You're amazing if you get the psychic abilities. So, yeah, Shantae, take us home.
Oh, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things I just agree with, but like, I mean, when it comes to the whole organization and reliance on organizational structures, I just feel like all of them have failed us. So I think we should just stop putting so much importance on that, because I think any government or similar structure is based on control. And when I look at the instances I know in which those like societies have collapsed, communities have been destroyed, when they come back together, they can only rely on each other. There's no like there's no reliance on a government initially, I guess. But I just feel like we should just stop caring so much about the structures that have failed us, literally. Like, maybe put some energy towards literally anything else that's calling you, because I think we're just going to stress ourselves out unnecessarily otherwise. But, yeah.
Sounds good.
I want to thank everybody for being here, and I want to thank our guests for coming. You know, there's a song I was trying to figure it out on there's a song that I was thinking of. It was a cover song that was done by a group that I can't remember right now. It's something about the jungle.
Welcome to the jungle.
Welcome to the jungle. And what was the group that
I think it was Guns N' Roses.
Yeah,
I'm
it
not
was
sure.
Guns N' Roses. They did the cover song. They didn't write the song, but so I guess that's what I was trying to remember, because I was trying to remember, welcome to the jungle, baby. That's what we're in right now, and that's what we're going to be in for a while before we walk out of the jungle. You might want to watch the Guns N' Roses performance of Welcome to the Jungle.
Sounds great. Anybody else? Any final statements? Questions or comments?
Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper and practice psychic abilities, because that's the best thing you can do with your time. All right. Thank you, everybody. This was a great...
Yeah, and I want to really thank our guests. I really appreciate the fact that you're social scientists and you're emphasizing that type of development, because I think a lot of people don't sort of see the complexity in that level of science.
But I have one more question.
Oh, come on, yes.
Just a question.
Go ahead.
So, social scientists, right? They're studying anthropology, right?
Psychology, sociology.
So, are they here to study us?
That's a good question.
Am I being studied?
We're the mice in the maze.
I think they study systems.
I think it's yes and no. There are data. We are data, but on the other hand, they have a plan that's being orchestrated based on but they have to monitor how it goes by collecting the data during the process to make sure it ends up at the right spot.
If mentally I'm in control of my own person, like we think we are, can I be an outlier to their experiment?
Yeah, I can answer that really clearly, because these guys, these ETs are free will ETs.
Are they?
They are. They don't like me to say it, but they are. I like to use the word fanatical. They are fanatically addicted to free will, meaning they will never interfere with your will.
How do you know?
I have been dealing with this family for a very long time. And
they're related?
We are. They've been involved. I consider them family. I've been dealing with these people my entire life. I'm sorry, I didn't mean, but it's like, for me, it's family. But the point is, they are so many times I've wanted to say, and have said, why don't we just go in there and fix this fucking place? This is like toast screwed up. And they said, basically, they've got a whole half of the galaxy where people argue these questions, nonstop. And they ultimately come down to, we're different from the other side because we don't force anything. We have to talk it out until they agree, until people, and the only thing they can do is shift the environment to more closely reveal to you what kind of a fucked up situation you're in, and then force you to be in a situation to make the decision yourself. So that's what they can do. They can force your environment, your choices, your stuff, what you're seeing around you to be so screwed up. You say, what is going on? And then in their minds, you're free to make a choice.
They're manipulating our reality?
Yes. And
then watching?
And because your reality is already being manipulated on the bad side by the bad ETs. They're adjusting the reality so that level of manipulation is revealed. And you see it.
Okay, I just want to put that out there. I still don't.
I don't
like him.
And then
I don't trust him.
Their goal at that point, when the reality that you're in is revealed, they back off, and they say, "Now you have to make a decision of where you want to go with this."
I think a good way to look at this whole phenomena is the way that you would look at just watching Star Trek. If you watch Star Trek episodes, the idea of being a science personnel and studying other civilizations, it would probably be a very appropriate thing. But then when you talk about good ETs and bad ETs, what you're really talking about is people who have a polarization towards being interventionists versus non-interventionists in the direct governance of a population. However, I think, as you've pointed out, the manipulation of a reality sort of seems like, okay, if I can't actually put strawberries in the soup or put strawberries in the cereal right here, I can at least put strawberries next to the cereal, and then I can make sure this person really notices that, okay, there's strawberries there. It is your choice. You have to sign the dotted line by putting those strawberries yourself
but
in the
if we
cereal.
leave, then the strawberries will just cease to exist. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
If
that's what I heard.
If you leave, you're leaving the strawberries on the table, and somebody else will come by and eat them.
Strawberries.
Okay.
Okay. One thing I want to emphasize is they don't want to diminish what you're saying, Kamaya. You're right. They're manipulating your environment because your environment is totally fucked now. They're manipulating it so that you see it. And at the point that it's so screwed up that everybody on the planet can say, this is fucked. This is terrible. When it gets to that point, they will offer an alternative to everybody that people will finally be able to see. And then, guaranteed, they will back off and wait for your decision.
Okay, last question, I promise. If this has been going on for like hundreds and thousands of years, it's like, do they wait until we have gained consciousness to show us that they're manipulating our reality? And then at what point do they, like, at what point have you backed off? I just feel like it's a loop from person to person to person to person to person to person to person, and I feel like it's not going anywhere. Like, by the time I gave my knowledge to my children, right, which our people did before then, and then before then, and then before then, but it's like every generation goes through something like this. At what point does it start to come into fruition?
When does it end? It's a complicated question. They don't mind me saying this. They had to prepare things for thousands of years to this moment, but this is the moment. The reason is they had to wait till a point that the society was sufficiently well developed that there was an internet, that there was a capability of people to communicate worldwide independently of the major powers that be. They had to wait to the point that there was enough of a sophistication within the society to understand the idea of galaxies, galactic life, and conflict within galaxies.
But we have writings on walls that say we understood that hundreds of years ago.
But there was no connectivity between the people. It was too primitive. It's just people writing with ink on caves.
They had birds that went back and forth and talked to each other. I feel like.
Actually, I can chime in here. Actually, let's let Shante say something before I say something.
Go ahead, Shante. We have to wrap this up too.
Sorry.
Oh, I don't believe that the internet is the only way that we could have been connected with people in other distant places. Like.
Well, what else could you have done? Like homing birds, like pigeons?
Sorry?
What else could you have done using homing birds of pigeons?
I mean, do you not think that people were remote viewing before, like in some way before, like, what we call it right now? Or even not remote viewing, but connecting, like, in a non-physical way with other humans?
I definitely... I have a pretty, I'm pretty confident with my answer on this one. I definitely think that in those ancient times when we do have a lot of testimonies from ancient scripts that there was a significantly more developed psychic baseline in some communities where that could have been an institutionalized thing. There were extraterrestrials walking on the ground on the base surface with the human populations, and if they weren't full-blooded extraterrestrials, they were half extraterrestrials and stuff like that. Eventually, there was this big wipe. We have this remote viewing studies to prove it. There was these big wipe. There was this flood. There was the development of the species of humanity was reset and just pushed down a lot. And then we're basically in a situation where we've had to build ourselves back up. And I think the idea of developing ourselves technologically to this point has been very much by design. I think actually what we have is a situation where the previous iterations of humanity were considered or fell onto what I'm just going to call hard times, in the sense that their civilization was wiped. I mean, if you look back at the previous highly advanced civilizations, you had sort of a genetic caste system going on. You had a system where basically there was the human level, and that level was pretty much even the more exalted versions of those baseline humans. They were basically glorified slaves, and these are space societies. They were societies where the higher levels were half human, half extraterrestrial, and then the highest levels were just pure-blooded extraterrestrials. So these were more advanced societies. However, now we're living in a society where it's basically just, this is all humans on the surface of the planet. And there are extraterrestrials who are heavily involved in puppeting that society, but it's very different now than compared to what we've been seeing in our previous remote viewing sessions, which is that with these extraterrestrial scientists who are sort of manipulating the planet that we're sort of talking about right now, they were overtly here. And the equivalent, if we were going to have that again, it'd be like the person in the White House is a 14-foot tall alien and they tell us all what to do because genetically they would say, well, we have bigger brains and you don't, so caste system. There's no social mobility. You're the bottom of the totem pole. The difference that I'm seeing right now, if I just compare our civilization right now with what was happening in the past, is there isn't this genetic sort of there still is sort of genetic dynasties that we can go into, but the overt genetic benefit that you would see from having like a much larger brain because you were related to this, because you were part of this extraterrestrial race, and thus being like 2-3 times taller than everybody else, that doesn't seem to be happening. So it's much more the humans' civilization now. And in the past, I would say, if you look back at Anunnaki, Mesopotamian, Sumerian times, the Sumerian times, it was not their civilization. The Sumerians were the room service to an alien colony. The Egyptians were the room service to an alien colony. The Greeks were the room service to an alien colony. And their pantheon of gods, those were the guys running the colony. And they basically had a Westworld experience. They could do whatever they wanted to us. And yeah, we had moments where we can see, oh, well, they were developing things in a much more elegant way than what we're doing today. And that is definitely the case, because the aliens had full control over the architecture, the way that the societies would grow. And so right now, I would say that that is still happening. There is still heavy extraterrestrial involvement in the human experience. However, it's happening through puppet strings. And so the human experience right now is much more human, even though there's a big asterisk on that to sort of intend that there is still extraterrestrial manipulation going on.
This is the moment when humanity has to wake up. All right, so let us thank everybody. I want to thank our guests for being here tremendously, and I want to thank all of our Farsight people and Shantae in the UK for all joining us, and we will see you next month for the next ET board meeting. All right? Thank you, everyone.